You're still watching Africa Today as the South African rand has reached an all-time low in earlier trade as the country faces the worst power outages in history. This also comes at the back of claims by the United States that South Africa has supplied Russia with weapons to attack Ukraine. But Share Trader and Treasuryone director André Cilliers says the decline didn't happen overnight. And here's how Mike's in a conversation with him went.
It didn't start today. It started over the last 2 days that the rand had lost some of its value. And so, today was just another one of those pieces of the puzzle that was thrown in as a little curveball from the side. So when one looks at the reasonings for the rand having reached these levels, then, one should start really at the whole Eskom debacle and the load shedding debacle. That makes it extremely difficult for businesses to actually do business, especially your smaller businesses that cannot afford all the generators and the sun panels and the batteries and the inverters, etc. And that adds a massive amount of money to their already high overheads. And that's not good for employment. That's not good for anything. Then you add to that a Transnet that's unable to really come to the party and get our mining products to harbors, which means that their income is lower, which means that export income is lower. That means that your trade of reference, your trade terms looks rather negative. Income looks negative, so that's got an impact on the fiscus. It's got an impact on inflation. It's a lot of factors that gets thrown into the pot. And then the curveball today with the U.S. ambassador saying that we supplied weapons to Russia during the docking of that ship in early December. But also in his press conference, citing the resolutions that was adopted at the recent ANC conference, where they stated, and didn't really take that impartial role as they proclaim that they have. It almost seems that they're more on the Russian side than anything else. And that lies very negative with America. And if that lies negative with America, it could have an impact on the AGOA agreement. It could have an impact on sanctions and trade going forward. So a very negative picture at this point in time.
So let's take AGOA into perspective, because many people have been talking about it and the implications. It speaks to the value of billions of rand. Unpack what the implications of losing AGOA would be.
Well, there's a lot of exports that goes to America under the AGOA agreement that's duty-free. Now, the minute that you sort of step away from that, then those products, even though it might still be exported to America, is not duty-free anymore, which means that product not being duty-free will attract duties, which means that ultimately that product becomes way more expensive on the consumer side, and then that product is less competitive in terms of other products out of other regions, which simply means that not the total value that goes out might still go out, which will have a very dramatic negative impact on the local exporters exporting those products if they cannot export to America anymore because becoming uncompetitive. It would have an impact on the jobs that they've created in that environment. We all know that jobs is something that we desperately need in this country. But that once again speaks to the profitability of those export companies and the value that they would then, or the loss of value, and which means that they will pay less tax because their profits will be smaller. Once again, a problem for the fiscus.
And if we were to put a number to that figure, what would it be?
Well, they're speaking to the order of around between 2.7 and 2.9 billion dollars. So roughly multiply that by 20, and then we're speaking 60 billion, call it 57 billion rands worth of exports that we're speaking within that package of the AGOA agreement. So that's a lot of money. That's a lot of exports. there's a lot of jobs that could be influenced by that.
It certainly is. The conversation is business, but you almost cannot separate the politics from the business. Now, if we go back a few months ago, the Americans came out and issued a warning, which was diplomatically incorrect from what we understand, or certainly didn't follow the correct channels, and they suggested that there was a likelihood of a terrorist attack on the shores of South Africa. Nothing actually came of this. Is this another situation where there's a cry of wolf and there actually isn't any substance to the allegations that have been made by the Americans?
Well, if I go back to the question that was posed to our president this afternoon in Parliament by Mr. John Steenhuisen, he had asked about this allegation of the possible arms that was put onto that ship. And the president's answer was more or less not denying it, but saying that there's an investigation and that after discussions with the American counterparts, it was decided that there will be an investigation. You know, in the circumstances of impartiality in this whole war, there shouldn't even be an investigation. There should be an outright, no, we did not sell any arms or supply any arms to Russia. Point blank, that's it. That should just be it. But instead, the answer comes that there's an investigation, and in time, in line with Mr. Ramaphosa's, diplomatic answers, in time, this will come to fruition, and we will know what's the outcome of the investigation. What happens is that the international investors, their decision has come to fruition, and they are starting to walk away from South Africa because it becomes rather an uninvestable country with lots of uncertainties, lots of alliances that might not be going down so well internationally. But apart from that, also an environment in terms of economic circumstances, when you speak about load shedding and all these things, where it becomes extremely difficult to actually do business. So it's a very unfriendly environment with lots of decisions that doesn't always is not very clear, and we're not really giving concrete plans as to how we're going to solve these things.
I don't expect you to paint for us a very bright picture, but if we take that 30% devaluation of the South African rand in the last few days and juxtapose that with the current stage 6 load shedding that we are experiencing across the country, what sort of picture does it paint for business, in particular small to medium enterprises? Those that you mentioned that cannot afford generators or some form of backup power supply.
Well, the small businesses combined throughout this country employs more people than what the big corporates are actually employing. So that's the backbone. And this interesting one, all the politicians and all the people always speak about small business being the backbone of the economy. That's the nuts and bolts of job creation. And if that falls away because those people can't do business anymore, there's a lot of people that will suffer and lose their jobs. And the impact of that on the economy is absolutely dramatic and disastrous. We cannot afford it. So we need to take care of small business. But apart from that, it's not just them not being able to do business. The price at which they have to do business becomes so excessive that they have to continuously increase their prices. That continuous increase in prices just adds to our inflation rate, and which means a weakening of the exchange rate also adds to inflation being imported.
Is this ship sinking?
Okay, so, it sounds in everything that I'm saying that the ship is sinking. No, I don't think that this ship is sinking. But I think it's in very, very rough waters. And the only way that we can get through this rough waters is if we have a proper management team and a proper captain and a fantastic leadership captain at the steering of the ship.